Welcome back to If I Knew You Better. I'm Brendan Davis, your host, and today I'm excited to introduce a new segment to this show, or a new variety of this show. I'm going to do something that I used to do on my original podcast, Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom, which is that I would have a recurring guest, a returning champion, as I would say, who I share a lot in common with, and we would come together and sit down about once a month or so, depending on schedules, and catch up on the stuff of life. And we're going to modify that concept a little bit for If I Knew You Better, because I want to make it fit more of a universal audience. And we'll talk about this in context. But that friend is sitting here with me. I've got my old friend Kevin GEIGER.
Hey, Brendan.
How you doing, man?
Doing well. Good to be here in your new digs, podcast-wise.
Yes.
We've been apart for a while.
We have. We're going to talk about the specifics of this. What I'm going to do first is a couple of comments about how I'm updating this general concept for this new show. So we have called it, and we can continue to call it, the Fretful Laowai Radio Hour. And of course, Laowai is foreigner in Chinese. Yes. And usually it's not exactly kind of a bitch session or a grievance council of some kind, but we would kind of talk about what's going on and in a very real way.
Indeed.
And we're going to do that today. But what we're going to do that's maybe slightly different, and this is the theory. We'll see what happens in about an hour. So we're done, because we don't really edit this. That's one of the principles is, unless somebody has a sneezing fit or the doorbell rings, we basically kind of leave this as it is.
Yep.
It's a conversation between two great friends who are really in sync. We're going to do a few less inside jokes that reference that old podcast, because I don't assume everyone listening to this has heard it or cares. We're also not making an assumption that people care too much about China, but that does happen to be our experience at the moment, because we're sitting in Beijing talking. Right. This has been the focus of both of our professional film and TV lives for a while, although that's changing in lots of ways, which we'll talk about for both of us. But we're going to make an effort to connect our kind of very unique and specific experiences here to a more broader global narrative that everybody can relate to. And that's what we want to do.
Yes. And I think, thank you again for having me on this version of your podcast ecosystem. And I think the timing is great, because as we've spoken about before on Big Fish, and as I think we'll get into today, our personal and professional lives continue to evolve, as most people's do. And the things that brought us here to China are changing. China itself is changing. And our interests are beginning to lie elsewhere in some cases. So it's a good sort of nexus point, I think, for the evolution of the podcast chats that we've had to this new forum. And hopefully, as you mentioned, talking about things personally, professionally that are specific to us, but have maybe a broader takeaway for the listeners.
Right. That's really the goal. And when I talked to you when we were setting this up on WeChat originally, and I said, I really want to do this again. And so let's get together, because there's so many great philosophical takeaways I've been having from, and a lot of it's very personal, and so I won't bore everybody with my own navel gazing, but things that I've personally resonated with from these recent guests I've had. And for instance, Stephen Katz, who, as we talked about briefly on that show, but actually, he's somebody you've known for quite a long time, and you know him from here in China as well as like from the bigger world.
And I still learn things from listening to your podcast episode about him that I had no idea, If I Knew Him Better.
Right. Well, thank you. I'm glad, and that made me really happy when you told me that. I'll say that for the record here, because that is the goal, is that we get, and that's what Michael Weesey told me, and of course he was my guest this last week on this show, and that there have been so many that I think are really moving for me to listen to personally. That's my favorite one ever so far, because we got really into it, and he's had such an amazing career and continues to have an amazing life, and will hopefully continue to have many more decades of awesomeness to share. But Michael's story is incredible. So I've been having these, personal epiphanies, and that's what I'm hoping to let people listening to the show, hearing all these diverse folks sharing their stories. So that's what I want us to be able to continue to do on this. And so the previous version of this, I would say that it was a bit more of like it was almost like an electronic crying towel for people also on a China adventure, where all of our friends here would listen and laugh and relate,
right,
and our friends elsewhere who know about our travels would be able to really commiserate.
Oh, okay, I understand now.
Exactly. But let's start. Let's have you give us sort of a little potted bio on you, just the short version for people who have not done the deep dive. And let me say that there's Kevin's original Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom interview where we get into his whole biographical backstory and his journey career-wise and growing up and getting into the professional world and moving to China. And then we have 6 or 7 of these, like, hour-long unedited chats as Fretful Laowai, at least.
Right.
And also you were on How China Works on one episode. So there's a lot of Kevin in my podcast world that you can dig deep into. But for the sake of just keeping this moving along, would you give us kind of the short version now?
Okay. So in 1966, I was born in Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay, it's starting pretty far back. That's good, though.
Panic look on Brendan's face. But
you're going to mash the gas here. Sure.
I got to mention the Midwestern corn-fed boy origins. I always had an interest in storytelling, drawing, comics, etc. And that, long story short, led me to art school and then to school for computer graphics. Yeah. And ultimately into Hollywood, working for visual effects, and then for Disney, the Walt Disney Company, on animated features. To my astonishment, my own astonishment, wow, they'll actually let people like me work on stuff like this. And so that was something that I did for about 12 years in the U.S. from 1995 to 2007, and primarily at Disney, as I mentioned, and then got bored with that. People find that kind of weird, but it became like clocking in and clocking out. The work was cool, the money's good, but I wanted to do something really for myself.
Right.
And this dovetailed with a nice little midlife crisis I was having on a personal level with separating from my wife at the time and so on, and caused me to start consulting around the world. That consultation tour led me to mainland China, where I made the plunge in 2008 and moved to Beijing to teach at the Beijing Film Academy. I had taught at CalArts before and always had a soft spot for academia. At the same time, I was running my studio game. And that move led me to a number of wonderful opportunities, starting a company here, Magic Dumpling, for IP development, meeting my wife, Wen, who I now have 2 children with here, and also working for the Walt Disney Company, again, to my astonishment, as head of creative, vice president, head of creative for their China Local Content Initiative. Short-lived, but magical. We put 4 shows on the air and had some cool experiences with that. And then back out again on my own recognizance. So, and just dealing with that sort of jumble of family, the work-life imbalance, as we call it.
Right.
But still here, and increasingly, though, looking at resuming projects and opportunities globally. I've always kept touch with my global network. Yeah. But as the political climate here, as the media climate in mainland China has changed, evolved, tightened. You and I have both faced, because we're working on one project together, not here, but we traffic in this common zone. We've seen that, expats have to change their game here. And we had a whole episode talking about this previously.
Exactly. There's several of those big fish, Fretful Laowais, that if you do want to do a deep dive on China entertainment business specifically, because it's talked about so much, and Kevin and I, and especially Kevin, have got pretty long histories and credentials in that area. So and then we're friends with basically everybody else who does, whose opinion you would want, and so we do our best to sort of quote people without quoting them and ruining their reputation. But we there's a lot of that information on those previous shows if people want to do a deep dive.
Right. So basically, my love is storytelling. That sounds cliche, but it really is storytelling, animation, art. And I go where the opportunity is. Right. And I have no preconceptions, or I try to have as few preconceptions as possible about where that could be, and also where that needs to be. So I've had people ask me, are you going to be in China forever? And it's like, well, forever is a big word. Yeah. If you use that word, the answer would definitely be no. We're not going to be anywhere forever. But I've found that a lot of flexibility is required in your thinking regarding the creative side, of course, of what you're doing, but also the business side and just logistical side of how you're operating and how you're handling everything. So
totally, and this is something that's kind of a recurring theme just in our friend conversations, and again on those previous shows. This is sort of like something that's the constant spine of our stories, but what I want to do on this, and why I thought it would be good to sort of introduce this concept to this new podcast and this hopefully new audience. Of course, there's probably some overlap, but this experience that we're having is very specific, but it's a comparative lesson in how to deal with these changes in the changing economy, and of course on a broader scale and not in our industry. There are the issues.
Yes.
I mean, great guy running for president, has no chance, but he's got a hell of a brain. Andrew Yang, as they call him in the West, and that would be Yang, by the way, in China. But his point is that he really hammers is about the implications of AI and robotics, and how this automation is going to just massively upheave the global workforce. And so I think that discussing how do you deal with systemic changes constantly.
Yeah.
We do that already. And it's a never ending game of surfing the shifting sands. And so this is part of it. We both have our bullet point. The way we do this, dear audience, dear listener, is that we chat a bit. We have bullet points, each of us, of the different things we'll chat about. And then we do a pregame where we talk for an hour. And we realize we should have been recording.
Exactly.
Our time to have lunch after. Yeah, we do the show on the couches, and then we realize, okay, well, there goes our lunchtime afterwards. So let's go ahead and record now. But this is a recurring theme for both of us, and so that's again what I'm hoping people listen to this and get out of it is I don't know, maybe there's something about the way we have to think and evaluate and constantly shift that will be impactful or useful for other people.
Yeah, I was thinking, we were talking about taking it from the micro. It's funny to refer to China as a micro, but the micro of China to the macro of any expat working in any kind of overseas situation. Right. But then that can be taken further to the meta of what you're talking about, of uncertainty.
Exactly.
Just in general in the world. And, when just a couple of days ago, I was like, is it just me or does the world seem like it's just going nuts?
Well, when is your very perceptive wife?
Yeah, my wife.
Very perceptive wife.
And on every level, right? Politically, economically, just the violence we've seen in the U.S., other places, stuff that's going on here politically. It seems like everything, like somebody just took the blanket and just ripped it off the bed, and everybody flew over on their butts. I can have a better analogy than that, but anyway,
you have a less family friendly analogy.
Pulled the rug out from under us.
Oh,
that's where I should have went. I don't know what I was just digging.
We keep it unedited. It's good though. So I appreciate that you brought it home though. you found something that worked.
And even people like ourselves who think, maybe in a self-satisfied way, we're already out of the box in terms of a false sense of security, etc. So we should be able to handle this.
Emphasize false,
better than other people. Still, it's disconcerting. It can throw you for a loop.
Yeah.
And you're just like, my God, it really is true that you can't rely on anything really anymore, and that anything that you have the illusion of solidity about is you're quickly reminded that's not the case, right? It's ephemeral and shifting constantly. And I was reminded of that this summer when I was traveling, with my family back to see our extended family in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your photos, being connected on all the social medias, as we are being able to see on Facebook, your photos of you and the kids. You and one of the kids enjoying being in and around your parents' house and, Cleveland and wide tree-lined streets and gorgeous, kind of environment that our fellow Americans would love to have. And it's really in effect.
And many people take for granted in some cases.
Your folks are in seemingly ideal. I mean, everybody has their challenges, but a seemingly idyllic type of a neighborhood it looked like looking at it through the internet.
Cleveland Heights is called the City of Trees. That's the official tagline for Cleveland Heights, where they live in Ohio. Okay. So, and indeed, it's a beautiful area. It's not particularly high end economically. It's not poor. It's middle class.
Yeah.
But really a nice place. And we do our annual trip back to the U.S., which I've done every year since I've been here, but have become more important to my parents now that I have children of my own, and really more important to us for for the reasons you just mentioned, like having Claire, my 4-year-old, and Emma, my 18-month-old, be able to play without worrying about them getting snatched or run over by something, and just seeing them in nature in a way that's not so maintained and corralled like a park, but just a backyard, and they can noodle around there in the garden as long as they want.
They don't need a face mask.
Don't need a face mask. Look for bugs. Play with their cousins.
Yeah.
And then seeing that, it's like, okay, why am I overseas again? Why am I doing the things that I'm doing? And it's not always a matter of doubting or thinking, man, I made the wrong decision. A lot of times it reaffirms, oh, right, I'm here for these reasons and those, and those still justify being there, but maybe we do need to look at, what's coming up in the next year or two in terms of as the kids get older, where they should be. And it's not all about myself or even my wife anymore. So, we always have that sort of like reckoning. And this year we had 6 weeks of reckoning.
Yeah. and I think you said that was about 1 week too much.
1 week too much, yes.
You could have done with 5 weeks of reckoning would have been, reckon that would have been better?
Yes, I reckon it would have been better. We've done 6 weeks of travel before, like even when we had Claire, when she was a baby.
When you just had Claire.
Yeah, and something came up with a visa, and we had to apply and wait, and so you get delayed. So we've done that. But when you've got a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, it's a little bit more of a superheated situation.
Yeah.
And basically, my wife and I had no time to ourselves at all for 6 weeks, which I would not recommend that.
My single self can't even imagine this.
It was pretty
like a lovely girlfriend, but no kids or anything. So yeah.
So we it was great. It was a great trip. We saw my brothers, we saw my parents, we saw cousins, uncles, aunts, friends. And then that 6th week, we're back in, because we went in and out through Taiwan to go to the U.S. because we have relatives there.
Yeah, and Wen is from Taiwan.
Yeah, she's from Taiwan. So I have in-laws in Taipei. That last week, we were just all so tired of each other. So the photos that you saw on Facebook, the bright, smiling, happy, you didn't see where we're just like sitting there just like dead-eyed. Like, okay, this cannot be over soon enough.
Yeah, and let's get back to our Beijing routines.
Exactly. The jet lag didn't help because the kids are on a different jet lag recovery schedule than we are.
Yeah.
Basically, they're not on a jet lag recovery schedule.
Okay.
Right. As an adult, people have their different forms of doing this. The kids are at the mercy of their... I
usually beat it. It's very rare that I have any because I just have my own way to deal with it.
Some people go cold turkey. Other people have the nap
Everybody's
system.
got their tricks if you do this kind of travel a lot.
The kids just were at the mercy of their clocks. So basically that last week in the Taipei heat,
oh, geez.
The kids are up in the middle of the night. We can't sleep. And then invariably 2, 3 in the afternoon would just crash. So we're carrying them like sacks of potatoes in the midday heat back to the hotel, and just like, okay, let's just get this done with. Yeah. So when they were back in school, back here in Beijing,
it's like happy day.
And it was very stereotypical, right? My parents would be super happy when we went back after. Sure. So there's that normal stuff about just the cycle of life with your family, etc. But then compounded by where are we going to continue to send them to school? They're here in Beijing, basically studying overseas.
Yeah, there's structural issues.
Cultural issues,
things like that.
Yeah, the requirements of the school systems, their language, they're both bilingual.
Which is awesome.
It's awesome.
Any of my friends listening, anybody listening that has young kids, teach them Mandarin. Even if you have no interest in even ever coming here, teach them Mandarin while they're young and they can learn it easy.
They'll be dealing with somebody in the future.
Teach them Spanish and Mandarin, and if they already speak English, they're going to be pretty golden.
As somebody who grew up not having a second language, I really think it is important to just pick one at least, Yeah. And the kids, when my daughter was with her half Japanese cousins, my brother's wife is Japanese, she started picking up Japanese. I mean, just like, God, she's like a I mean, there's amazing. No limit to what they can absorb. So that little girl's
bilingual as well.
Yeah.
Those kids are bilingual.
They're bilingual, and she was just speaking Japanese and singing Japanese songs, and I was like, holy crap. So,
well, to a kid, it's just a song, and you just have to, just like you learn the melody, you learn the thing, so.
Just a song, just a language. They don't have any conception of what they can't do.
They don't know how hard it is.
Exactly, how hard it will be, yeah.
And so they don't have the full context to get to appreciate how impossible that is for us as a couple of 50-year-old dudes.
Yeah. So we we're thinking about the long game in terms of where we'll be raising them. And then also related to this, whenever you're an expat, you're prepared, I think, or you try to be prepared for the problems you may have in the country you've chosen to go to.
Sure.
You have trouble fitting in. Or
we have the way we deal with things here.
Yeah, foreigners can do this, but you're not allowed to do that. Okay. Exactly. But you're not necessarily prepared for, if you're overseas long enough, what starts to happen back in your home country.
The wheels are coming off back home and you have no idea because you're not driving that car.
Exactly. So this summer, as I was taking care of some logistical stuff with bank accounts and my will and so forth, because now that Emma's here, is updating all this stuff, having certain institutions tell me, you can't do that, or you can't do that this way. You need to do it that way because you're no longer a resident of the United States. You spend most of your time overseas. And so since you're a non-resident, or since you are a non-resident, we'll have to eventually do this thing that you're not going to like, but it's how our system works. And, or just authenticating who you are, which I appreciate. I actually learned it apparently is hard, as much hacking news as you hear. It seems to be really hard to actually hack and steal somebody's money. I know it happens.
Sure.
It's happened to me.
Sure.
But because I could barely do anything that I needed to do legitimately.
I had my identity stolen. They gave it back, and my credit was so bad.
But
please continue. It's true. It's a joke that's also true.
And I had friends who warned me about this. So, and again, it's not endemic to China at all. It's actually back home where they say, hey, Kev, if you're away long enough, you're going to start to run into things back in the U.S.
Yeah, I was fascinated, and you may not get as granular here for the show, but when you were telling me off mic, I was like, oh, okay, well.
Well, just for example, an account that is only open for residents of the United States. And so if I was in the United States when I opened it, everything's cool. But hey, you've been out for like 10 years now. Are you ever coming back? And since you've been out that long, management may decide to close the account because you're a non-resident. Even though when you opened it, you met the criteria, you currently don't. Are you coming back in the next year or two or not? And that rolls back into, am I coming back in the next year or two?
Exactly, yeah.
And should I come back in the next year or two?
Puts pressure on those decisions that you were just you're trying to surf the waves in your day-to-day life, but you have to actually be specific about those answers.
I have a feeling you and I both, either literally or mentally, have a balance sheet. Of the pros and cons of, on the personal level, logistical, business-wise, political, where should I be and why? Exactly. And there's a tipping point at which, okay, I'll stay here. I think.
If I could create like some third place to live, some third space to live in, that balance the different, pluses, minuses, pros, cons, issues. Yeah, because I'm living in. I jumped in the middle of what you're saying, but I think that we're all psychologically living in some uncharted land, like all of us individually, and yours is different than mine because of our differences in our lives. Neither one of us is living here, living there. I mean, we're living in some weird, construct in between, right?
And I'm glad you said that about this weird, this weird land, this weird in-between zone, because that's how I feel, especially this year. I feel that more than I did previously about, I don't really know where I belong. Even identifying myself as an American, I used to be very proud of that. Now, with everything that's going on, it's like I don't wave that. I was never a flag waver, but I was never shy or ashamed about being an American. And my definition of what I am as an American and what I feel is probably different than some other Americans. And that's what makes us America, right?
Exactly.
That's part of being an American.
We don't get, we were welcome to, and we don't get super political on this, but, Kevin and I are pretty aligned politically, and let's just say that we didn't vote for the current president. We'll just say it that way.
And also, I don't like the current situation. I mean, just what's going on with gun violence, with everything else.
Yeah, I'll get into that on my list a bit too, because that's just.
But for us, it really is. It's a real thing. Like, where do we want our kids to be? And my wife will say, "Are they safe in the U.S.?" And we were there for 6 weeks. Nobody got shot. No, we didn't get shot, but other people did. And it's like this. I'm not making light of this.
No, it's not even fun. It's just a fact.
A serious issue that just is. There's an impasse, right?
Yeah.
Everybody. The typical things happen. After each shooting, and then status quo is maintained, and status quo is becoming more and more untenable. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
No, that's okay. No, we go where we go. I mean, my note. We can jump around a little bit because my note about it. I watch the news from the U.S. basically every day, and I am as alternately heartbroken and angry as anybody else. Yeah. But because we live in this third area, we live in this. Strange.
It's a different point of view.
Yeah, we have a different point of view on it. I mean, I'm as emotionally connected as I am to anything,
right?
Which is to say not much because I've had to kill myself inside to work in the entertainment business, so I don't have an emotional life. But psychologically, but intellectually, I can understand it. I can rationalize what I'm trying to. Yeah, there's some truth to the humor of that. But so yeah, it's a heartbreaking thing to look at, and I feel some guilt for, I'm glad I'm not in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But I'm also not planning to be here forever, and then where do I go?
Where do you, exactly. I've had the same thought.
Yeah, it's like, well, where do I go? I'll get into my part of that more later, but how about you?
But in terms of where do we go, I felt on one hand happy that I had the the freedom just because I've uprooted myself to be more mobile in terms of where I go, even though I've been in mainland China for the last decade. Whereas people like my parents who have been in Cleveland forever are feeling just as untethered in their own way about like what the hell is going on with everything, and like, but they're there. I mean, and also they're 80 years old, so they're not going to leave that city and that home, but are feeling like they don't know where they are anymore in their own way.
They don't recognize their country.
They don't. Yeah, what's happening? Well, I don't recognize this, and of course,
some people say that, and they're because they're scared of brown people.
Right. I was just about to say exactly.
But then there are the other people, which is our people who are watching those horrible racist, motives be given free rein to run rampant.
Principles that you thought defined America that seem to be absent now.
Didn't we beat all this? Wasn't that the point of the civil rights movement? And wasn't the point of all the drama in the 60s and the 70s?
He said, I thought this
people
was
kind of
done,
partied in the 80s because they thought, oh, okay, we got that covered, and it's okay to be whatever you are,
It's not there was that, the person, was it Fukuyama who wrote The End of History?
Yeah.
Was it late 80s?
Right.
Early 90s?
Yeah, we thought we were kind of done with all this, this retrograde.
Guess not. It seems silly at the time. You thought, okay, I'm sure history's not done. But I understood his his definition, what he was talking about. It was
a good book at the time.
It was, but it was kind of,
due for an update.
A bit. So we're looking at where to be. A driver behind that in many cases are the projects that we're working on.
Sure, exactly. And you've got some cool stuff going on.
We do, and we also have some cool stuff that could be going on that we're waiting on. And you're in this boat as well.
Exactly.
In fact, I think on one of the projects we're in the same boat.
Well, I'm playing the waiting game as far as film finance, and that's adding to my whole life limbo that my lease is expiring on this place that we're sitting in now in about 5 weeks, and I love it. I mean, if I'm going to stay here for any length of time, I don't want to move because I'm not going to be better than this for the money and blah, 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 blah. But the nature of our business forces certain decisions in a way that's really nerve-wracking to sort out. And so in a way, we have a preview of what a lot of our friends back home are dealing with in other ways, but what everybody's going to be dealing with at some point or another, which is you can't take things for granted that you could take for granted previously. And so, the stress that we have doesn't equal, I don't think it can equal what people who are in the middle of, say, obviously, for instance, gun violence, because it's happening right now. It doesn't equal that, but it's significant enough on its own. I mean, they're the people who are, whether it's like spiritual or self-help type authors who say things along the lines of you're given, some religious people put it in terms of God, but the idea that you're given what you can handle. Well, some people are given more than they can handle. Yeah. And some people are wrecked by what they're given. But I think it's a nice concept. I don't know how valid it is. But this idea that, at any given time, you sort of, those of us who at least we pick and choose our battles, we've increased our own optionality by choices that we've made and continue to proactively make. Mm-hmm. And then there are the decisions made for us. Yes. Such as one of the things we'll talk about on your list in a moment about rules about content, which affects projects you can make and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, let's actually get into that a little bit.
And as a precursor, we should probably just to make sure we have good
set
coverage,
it up for the folks here.
Just remind people of what we really do. If you were to encapsulate what Brendan and I do, we're both essentially independent producers.
I pretend I'm in the entertainment business.
So we're developing IP for various forms, film, television, VR in my case, immersive media, and the fun, the joy of our careers is that we we live in this morass of uncertainty where we're developing things, bootstrapping, working on shoestrings, chasing money, and trying to pull things together that sometimes come together, other times don't, but even worse, sometimes just take a long time to come together
or to not come
together.
Exactly. There are people. A lot of people have said this in various ways better than I'm going to probably say it right now. But maybe this will remind you, having heard it in another way before, is that massive success and massive failure look the same up until about 5 minutes before the end. Like the process, it's like pretty much looks identical. in a lot of ways. Like with any kind of a big endeavor, a big journey, a big creative project, it's essentially the same meetings and conversations and all that stuff, and then you maybe get up to the end, and people make huge movies and release them, and then they die.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And that's the process along the way. Now, granted, there are some differences, but you can't quantify it in a super meaningful way. I mean, it's a lot of the same quote unquote smart people making the giant hit one year, and then maybe the next year it's not a giant hit. And there's a lot of reasons for that. So again, that's getting a little granular for what we do. But yeah, so we're, creators, producers, and we both sort of really pull our own string in terms of motivating ourselves out into the world.
Right.
I mean, we both.
You don't have to get up in the morning if you don't want to, but if you don't, nothing happens.
Nothing's going to happen, right? And I like to eat and have lights when I want lights and the air conditioner to run, so I need to pay those bills.
But if you do get up, there's also no guarantee anything's going to happen.
Exactly.
You're not clocking into a place and getting a salary every week. And even though you could be laid off, at least you know that you have a salary coming at the end of that.
At least you have one last check hopefully coming if you get laid off from the regular gig.
And we're typically gobsmacked every week by something or another, or maybe on a daily basis sometimes, that, especially if you have multiple projects going on.
Right. So so what are some of the things, I mean, and this is, I guess, in the to frame this from my point of view, because again, from what I know, from knowing the more detailed picture of this, is that, like for instance, all of my development is offshore. I have nothing here. I have nothing in terms of professional. I have a few business ideas that I'm attached to, but they're not creative pursuits, right? They're business things. And I could be resident somewhere else and still have my hand in those things. So I don't have to physically be here, but in terms of what you're working on, I know because of some of your opportunities and decisions that you've been considering or having to think about when you're going to be confronted with this more fully or more unavoidably, that basically your timeline, your horizon for the next 3 years, and knowing what you want to do in terms of the kids and as Emma gets into school, that's really forcing the issue for you time-wise.
It is. So we've decided to re-up for one more year in China. As we're
like officially.
Just today, my wife paid the tuition for the next year for Claire's kindergarten, and we're going to re-up our lease, which isn't the exact same timing, but October, to stay here in Beijing. And that's based upon projects which are currently running, but also projects which might be running but are still in limbo at the moment. So,
but you do have a few things that are actually happening.
Yes, and there are a couple reasons that, in terms of why we would still be in China. One is for a project that we're trying to do that is related to China in some way, either as a co-production or thematically. Another, though, is to leverage on the resources. We have animation studios that we like here that do great work for a relatively inexpensive price compared to what it might be in Los Angeles or Madrid or some other place. So it's a combination of the inputs and the outputs in terms of that. But again, the media environment is tightening here. They're just last week or last couple weeks, Wen told me there was an announcement. It was in Chinese that said that it was the duty of every citizen in mainland China, every content creator, producer, director, to subscribe to the views of the party and to promote the proper thinking and so forth. And that there's a specific line, every minute of content must be political.
Yeah.
And I remember asking Wen, I said, what do they mean by that? What's your interpretation? She's like, well, it just says every minute of content must be political.
Right.
And I was like, I started laughing when I heard that, and then I've spoken to my Chinese friends. And then you started
crying.
Oh, yeah, laughing, crying, and spoken to my Chinese friends who have also, it's real, right?
Sure.
Have different takes on what that means. But that's the fun of it, right? Is that then you get into the regulatory situation.
Like what's the room for interpretation?
Yeah, and where you submit your content to get approved or not, and you see where you are. But definitely...
how are people taking it? I mean, what's sort of
people are taking it as well. This is no different than in the past when there's been some rule about things should be this way or that way, and then you find out specifically what that means in your film or TV show. Not so much different from like in the U.S. with the MPAA, where they have certain ratings on nudity. And they say, okay, this can't be a full frontal shot.
Exactly.
If it's 3/4, that's not 3/4 enough. And you've got somebody in there actually kind of...
Back to the penis reference.
Exactly. So I avoided
that's a theme
being
from,
too explicit. But
about where the standards are. I like that's funny.
Right.
That is a pretty specific dividing
So to be
line
fair,
in terms of ratings.
every country has some form of this.
Sure, everybody's got their own community standards.
But we're dealing with that here, and the bigger issue, quite frankly, is just getting funded enough to have to deal with that issue. Right. If you don't get funded, that's all theoretical. So the big feature animation project that we've been developing for a while, and now actually have good traction on.
That's the one I'm familiar with.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It's
we're not going to talk about.
It's cool. It's coming together. I've talked about it before on Big Fish, and if you go to my social media, it's not hidden.
Right.
But we're just trying to get a commitment from the Chinese distribution partner to say, yes, we are going to make this. It's on our schedule. Right. Here's how much we're in for.
Yeah, it's a big enough project. You need some things to be solidified.
And based on that, then, all the stuff with the co-production partner, the non-Chinese co-production partner,
they feel confident.
They can get their hey, we got this. So, you know how it works.
They know they have at least this piece of guaranteed return. You have hopefully guaranteed return, which is another. Yeah.
And it's all depending on the creative. So we've been turning in, we've been taking notes, turning in. We just turned in this morning what we hope is the last treatment revision before the screenplay. We'll see. But
he says,
keeping our fingers crossed. And it's a waiting game, as you are experiencing with your own stuff. So what I've tried to do is to have other irons in the fire at the same time. Most not immediately revenue generating, like my children's books, but something that at least keeps me expressing myself creatively. I can complete.
That's why I do the podcasts.
And then get out there and just, you have that gratification of having completed something, but also you're keeping yourself fresh, keeping yourself fresh in people's minds. Yeah. Luckily, one of these side projects became very real, and also in terms of some income. A friend of mine named Jesus Manuel Monten, who's a live action director from Spain, and I had met him at a VR conference. We were on a panel 2 years ago. He wasn't a VR guy, quote unquote, but those are the best VR guys. The guys who are not VR guys.
Okay.
And we've been keeping in touch, got along very well, and he said, "Hey, I'm doing this movie. It's a live action documentary called Amal, The Soothing Voice Among the Ruins."
Yeah.
And it's about this guy named Walid Abou Rashed, who is a puppeteer. He's a Syrian puppeteer who is putting on puppet street theater for children and families in the middle of war-torn Syria.
Yeah. Unbelievable project. What you showed me.
Mind-blowing.
It's crazy how cool and insane that is.
Any issues we're facing.
Yeah.
I've
got nothing to complain about compared to.
We're not, at least currently, living in a war zone. I mean, people in America in some places are living in what's effectively a war zone, but as we've spoken about earlier here. But I was blown away, and he said, "Hey, we'd like to do some animated segments within the live action documentary that are allegories of the stories that he's telling on the streets with his puppets. Are you interested?" And I was like, "Yeah." So,
that sounds awesome.
and he said, we can pay for it, of course. I said, "That's cool." And I said, and because it's a nonprofit documentary sort of situation, we were just basically looking to cover our costs.
You're not buying the beach house.
No, we're not going to get rich off of this. We're covering costs and happy to do it. So, and we are doing it now. We just signed the contract this week.
Great.
So we're going to rock and roll starting in September.
So you guys are directing and producing this.
Yeah, I'll be directing it. My wife Gwen will be co-directing. The animation sequences and providing those. Right. And working with some friends here on the execution of that, and that will keep us busy till the end of this year. So if the feature does get rolling, which I hope, then we'll be super busy.
Right. And these are the good problems to have.
The good problem to have, yes. I'm not worrying too much about how we're going to deal with the compounded work. You always figure it out in some way.
You do. We were chatting beforehand about how it's funny because in development, part of the balancing act there is you have to have a lot of irons and a lot of fires, but you have to not have so many things that you can't effectively develop them. You have to make sure that you have enough bandwidth to actually put into them. And I've certainly been guilty of that. I've certainly screwed the pooch more than once with having too many irons in the fire, or not having enough resources, or not being able to get enough resources. And you find that out in real time.
And having fires of different, heat levels. So, for example, if it does get too busy, well, the children's book that I'm currently working on that nobody's dying to read,
sure, you can kind of dial that down.
I can dial that down. I can put that on a slow burn, right, and like be super hot on the feature, on the animation segments, and having straws of different lengths basically is good, I think, because if you're working on something that's uncertain and it's big and you're waiting, has a lot of moving parts, it's nice to be able, as you mentioned, like with the podcast or with my books or so forth, to have something that's a relatively quick hit. Keeping the wheels going that way, as opposed to just sitting twiddling your thumbs and
because nothing good comes out of that. I mean,
especially psychologically.
Idle hands are devil's workshops. That old Southern folksy saying, and that's very, very true.
Exactly.
And the devil's in the details of your brain, usually obsessing about life choices. Should have gone to law school. All those things. Yeah,
you don't want to be in a situation. It's bad to be busy to the point where you can't think. But it's horrible to be so not busy that you're overthinking and overanalyzing and just becoming your own worst enemy psychologically.
Yeah, where I feel for my friends who are wrapped up in like the 996 culture here. And there's some people who are doing that and are busy for like the solid 12 or 14 hours, which is its own kind of hell. And then there are people where really they're doing maybe 6 or 8 hours worth of work, but they're expected to be there for 12 or 14 hours.
They want to see them at the desk.
They want to see them there. They want to see them dying inside, you know, and that just drives me crazy. But that's a very China-specific thing that we don't have to get into.
Yeah, you can't leave if the boss is still at their desk, right? You just sit there and look like you're doing something important.
I feel for a lot of my friends here that are in that environment.
Well, and now what's happening is that some of my friends are finding that time is being filled up nicely by certain studies that they're being expected to engage in.
We're trying to talk about that in a way that doesn't get our visas
so
yanked out of our hands.
I have a number of friends who work at government companies, banks, media companies that are directly state-owned here in China, and are now spending reportedly 25 to 30% of their time studying, the positions of the party, and are expected to, they have a nice newfangled app in many cases that goes through and they get the information and the time they spend on it and the levels they go through.
So it's like lessons and questions.
And
you're interacting with this thing.
All of the, making sure that you right thinking and right conduct and the, that you're basically politically correct. I mean, every country has their form of political correctness. Sure. This is the form here. And,
but the fact that it's being mandated that you're spending about a quarter to a third of your daily life.
Just expected that. And I have one friend who said, my God, I'm spending like 1/3 of my time on these apps, and then the other third of my time writing government reports, and the other third of my time actually doing my work that I should be doing. And I laughed. I said, when I was at Disney in China, I was spending 1/3 of my time doing these online compliance lessons and so forth. Yeah. Another third of my time writing reports and decks, CYA and managing up. Right. And then the other third doing my actual work. And he laughed. I mean, there's just some sort of congruency there in a way between I can relate, definitely. But it's certainly something that causes people. I have friends who they get home at 10 o'clock at night. And it's not just because of this one thing, but their kids are already in bed. And then they're up and out before the kids wake up. And so it really has a big impact on work-life balance. And I've been lucky that, as much as we complain about uncertainty and the indie producer lifestyle.
But you guys work for yourself and you're a duo. You're a work duo as well as
I drop my kids off at school. I pick them up. I structure things so I can do that. Right. And, it's a matter of choices, I guess. What do you want to choose for yourself in life?
And I think this is something that you've done very, very well, which we talked about before. So not to butter your biscuit about it.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah, no, I know, and I know it's not as easy. You're always very quick to say, it doesn't. I mean, obviously people post the good pictures on social media.
Yes. And I don't post the work pictures and the crying in a curled ball pictures.
You were the kids.
Both.
Nice. But
different times.
But we were talking about this earlier, and I think it's interesting. Again, where this is going to have a lot of China focus. As we're both sitting here, I'd like to think we'll continue doing this show off into the sunset and wherever we're living, that we'll do this kind of a check-in thing. It just happens to be sort of has this China focus now because of us. And we're trying to relate it in ways. We're trying to make it relatable to people who don't have this focus.
Pad in a way.
Right. But it's interesting in terms of this idea of global what this means in terms of the local industry trying, like, the mandates of them wanting to have like a global impact, yet these mandates ensure that can't happen.
Yeah, I'm regularly asked to speak on, and I'll be speaking this weekend on the issue of animation media, and invariably the question of how do we make our content more international? How do we make our endeavors more international? And you can't really give the real answer to that question, at least in my opinion, what the real answer is, because there are certain things that need to be done that you just can't really talk about, that can't necessarily happen here. And the decisions that are currently being made, and I, all respect, to the country I'm currently in, it's their right to decide how they want to do these things and
it's their choice to make their rules. But
there are pros and cons, right? There are consequences. So, currently I see that there are things going on that are leading in an opposite direction of what other people here are aspiring to regarding making something more international.
Right.
If you require something to be more didactic in a political way related to the local politics of a certain country, it's by definition going to be less global and less international and less universal.
Right.
That goes without saying. Now, there are exceptions, of course.
It goes without saying, but some people don't seem to get... And you have different people in charge of different things.
Yeah.
So part of it is left hand's not always talking to the right hand.
Right.
Or, there's no intermediary who's going to decide, well, this is how we resolve these two conflicting things.
Right.
But that's the reality, is you often have conflicting, that they have there are mandates for harmonious society stuff, and there are mandates for, let's be better integrated with the world.
Yes.
And often these things are just unresolvable, I think.
There are exceptions. When I think about, Michael Bay's movies, for example. Michael Bay has never met an American flag he doesn't like. Right. Every Transformer movie, they've got the big American flag waving in front of somebody's house. And again, he does that because he knows it plays well to the home audience. And people overseas still see the Transformer movies because they go there for the gear.
Sure.
And they go, okay, there's American flag, fine. Rambo.
They enjoy the rock and roll show of it.
Exactly. The original Rambo was hugely popular in the Middle East.
Right. And they're the bad guys.
This was a very propagandist U.S. film that did well globally. So it's not impossible for films. And I've had people here in China say, hey, well, you guys do it all the time. In the U.S., why can't we have a film like Wolf Warrior,
right? They're getting heat on Wolf Warrior 2 or Operation Red Sea, where China's the heroes and we're the bad guys.
And they're saying, hey...
It's like, well, I get it.
Yeah, we can do it too. And it's like, well...
It's just the timing is what's curious.
You could.
We wouldn't make that film now with you as the bad guys.
Right, and even now in the U.S., there's a growing reckoning in terms of how, especially taking gun violence as an example. I know that Hobbs and Shaw, the Fast and Furious spinoff that's coming out.
Did they have to tweak that because of gun stuff?
I don't want to. I'm not going to say anything as a spoiler, but I'll say this: they didn't tweak it because of gun violence, but even though it has plenty of gun, when you look at the teaser, there's you see plenty of gun action, but. Let me just say, because I don't want to spoil the movie. I haven't seen it yet, but I read spoilers. Okay. That's how you can spoil it. You read spoilers and you pass them on.
Are you from the future?
Yeah, I am from the future, because every time I contact my friends in the U.S., they're like, hey, wait, it's not even my birthday yet. But happy birthday.
Sorry, I've derailed you.
But no, that's okay.
This is like the old school Fretful Laowai.
Right, so this is what we were going to try not to do.
That's okay, but hopefully it's charming and endearing, and go with your point.
I'm fully railed. So, now I just got derailed. So,
Hobbs and Shaw.
Hobbs and Shaw.
Not to spoil it,
they tried to address, at least in some baby steps, an acknowledgement of the gun violence
impacts
issue.
of the violence.
You will see, apparently, in Act 3, some acknowledgement of what's going on, and at least a nod to the fact that, there's a lot of guns and maybe there's too many.
Okay.
So, or maybe a gun is not a solution. I should have shut up now.
Okay.
I don't want to spoil anything.
Well, that's
for any of you who are going to see Hobbs and Shaw.
I'm just confused, so that's okay.
I actually have to say, I was not going to see this movie. Yeah. I was like, oh, God, I'm so tired of Fast and Furious 17, whatever.
It looks kind of fun, and I don't really...
It's super fun from the trailer. I was sitting
the trailer looks like a lot of fun. I saw it in a theater. I saw it... we saw The Lion King that you're so hip on.
Yeah.
We saw that in the Dolby Atmos screen across the street at the Jackie Chan Cinema, which is a super high-end, local chain, especially, the rooms that are set up with the Dolby Atmos, and they also will do... of course it's 3D.
Yeah.
So we saw it in the fantastic theater, and that trailer was on. I'm like, wow, this looks pretty badass.
I like both the actors.
Interesting that was in front of Lion King. But.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting combo. And I was in China Unicom just, renewing a thing, and it came on TV. I was like, that looks really fun. In kind of like a Charlie's Angels way. There's that Charlie's Angels.
The angle they take.
It's very cartoonish in essence, but looks super
comedic
fun.
Action.
Yeah, comedic action. So.
We were both stunned into silence for a second.
Awesome. I'm going to see if you're going to keep that in.
I'm going to leave that in. I don't want to. No, so far I don't have to edit. So I'm going to keep that in.
You know how you're in that conversation. So I had some of these when I was back with my family and friends, where you get that, blah blah blah, and then there's that uncomfortable silence. And you have a choice. How
long do you let it hang?
How long do you hang? But also, then do you start talking about the thing you've always resented, or do you stay in like light and fluffy territory?
Whip out the grievance list and just start checking boxes. Back when I was in 8th grade,
my brother actually said after I left, the younger brother in Seattle, I got a text from him. He said, "Hey, when you asked me that thing in front of everybody, was that just a happy Buddha question, or was that like a total dick move?" And I said, the first one.
Nice. Whichever answer makes me look better. The first one for sure.
And he said, "Okay, that's what I was hoping."
I like how you phrase that. This is part of your happy Buddha question. Yeah. Once in a while, Kev and I we're in a WeChat group on this project, and once in a while he'll say something that I'm like, "Why did you stir that pot?" and I realize he's not trying to stir the pot. It's just a funny thing to say.
Just me being myself.
Well, that's something that I'm going to miss when I'm unemployed. Speaking of what's next for me,
Yeah, what is next for you?
Yeah, so did we cover your list of things?
We did,
mostly.
Yes.
And if there's a thought that there's a thought or two that we might
as much as anybody else cares to hear about. Yes,
no, that's all right. Well, I've covered. I've woven a lot of my points into the conversation with you, so I'm kind of looking at
good podcaster does. Right? You're a pro.
Well, the thing that's tricky, and I think again making this more relatable to people who have different types of jobs and careers and whatnot. My thought was, again, really increasing, we're talking about this idea of increasing your career optionality, and in my case coming here, your case as well. But because of all these changes in the local business, there's really no professional home for me here anymore. And the tricky part that I'm dealing with, and I don't have any answers, honestly. I have a lot of thoughts about it.
Questions.
But questions, is it going to be okay, Mom? But I don't really want to live full-time back in LA at the moment. Yeah, I love LA still, despite the problems, but
been there, done that.
It feels regressive in a lot of ways. There are things I can only do in LA, so I know I'm going to spend more time there, and I'm going to probably love it when I'm there mostly. But I'm in this weird place to be. My friend Chris Lynn Chu likes to refer to a liminal space, that time in between. And as I was kind of thinking about that, I was reminded of two different examples of this that are sort of related. I had this conversation with Chris Lynn actually on a podcast once, but I'm going to assume that you haven't heard it listening to this. But Robert Anton Wilson, the great esoteric writer, philosopher, comedian, raconteur, he had this concept because he dealt a lot with the idea of initiations, and he was very much about focused on the supposed lessons that to be learned from the outgrowth of the psychedelic movement, and what did we what's out there to be discovered, what lands mental and spiritual and philosophical are there to be discovered. And he's sort of, I'm paraphrasing, hopefully not too badly, but probably not doing justice to this, but essentially every life shift, every big change is like there's an initiation into the new. And I know that in my own case that it's easy for me to get stuck in grooves. I'm a creature of habit, and this is part of what I have to be on guard about. Most of us are, right? It makes me special, right? But, and again, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, it's great to be in a groove. I think Jason Blum is in a pretty great groove, right? With the success of their company, for instance. So if you find your groove, keep grooving, keep stay in it and make it deeper and wider and bigger and better. But Robert Anton Wilson, again, mentioned he had this concept that he dubbed chapel perilous, and I forget the references. He was actually getting this he pulled that out of a few other things. But this idea that it's this place, this chapel where you're dwelling, and it's a psychological place. It can feel very real, like a physical place, but it's this place you're in between places. So liminal space, chapel perilous, between, in this case, chapel perilous is like you've committed to something. You've made a commitment. In this case, it's our the big European movie that we're waiting on the very complicated financing process to play out.
Yeah.
Where there's absolute verbal, there's absolute commitment, and it's absolutely hard as hell to make it happen for a lot of reasons we won't get into here because of tax laws in various countries and moving money and stuff. So, it could be a deal breaker, or it could all resolve at a pretty high expense, etc. So, we've committed to this, and again, lease is expiring,
right?
And lots of things like wanting
daily expenses,
but like wanting / needing to go home and do certain things, wanting to just do my checkup at my doctor in Los Angeles and things like this, things that you want to do, wanting to see friends and mostly wanting to make this project, right? But living in this chapel perilous, it's like you've already committed. You're in it. But it's the perilous part is you're totally in jeopardy.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you've committed to something, but yet it's not completely, like the bricks are not set, the mortar's not dry. And then my friend John the other day, one of my very oldest friends, who's going through some stuff of his own that I won't get into, but he reminded me, in the words of the great philosopher Hunter S. Thompson, who influenced both of our lives pretty heavily, you buy the ticket, you take the ride.
Yep.
And I bought the ticket. So what we're going to do on this segment moving forward every so often is we're going to try to look at this stuff of life in ways that can be relatable to everybody. So,
yes.
Do you have any closing thoughts as we?
I think just on that note about buying the ticket and taking the ride, I think that's a point very well taken that not everybody takes, but indeed it sounds ridiculously simple. But you need to at least make a good, honest attempt to see that thing through.
Yeah.
Now, as somebody who has had everything happen from divorces to layoffs to quitting jobs to what have you, there are points where you need to make a decision maybe to get off the ride.
Exactly.
But only after you've really
you've
tried
done the lap.
And I've often said I'll try anything twice.
Yeah, I like that.
The first time just to see how it is. The second time to make sure I really don't like it if I'm going to, and then, okay.
To apply the lessons learned.
Right, apply lessons learned, exactly.
You learn some hard lessons and, next time I can improve on this and this and make it great, in theory.
And I actually say that mostly in respect of food. But,
he says optimistically.
But can apply to many other things. And I think that just, for anybody who's still listening, the issue of uncertainty.
Yeah.
This is something that it's endemic to, I guess, human life. You never know. Anytime you have the illusion of certainty, it is indeed an illusion. Yep. And we all say we think we know that, but unless you really get hit with something, you have to live it to know it. You have to live it to know it. And divers say it's not the shark you see you have to worry about. Yeah. It's the shark you don't see. Exactly. That is something that, once you actually have had to deal with that shark you didn't see, I guess this is what people are talking about with uncertainty. And it really teaches you a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you have to ask yourself, who am I? What am I about? What do I want? Where do I want to be? To basically find, I don't want to get too, high-minded or philosophical, but find out who you are as a person and what you're ultimately all about. And so I think we're both facing, is this not a post-midlife crisis, but
I think we're right in the middle of it, I guess. Yeah.
Or is this for my case, the
extended dance remix?
I don't think
is this the club remix of your midlife crisis?
I think every 10 years or so you get, I was going to say, it's not an extended midlife crisis for me because I had one at early 40s.
Yeah,
and
you
then
kind of hit one early.
Some pretty good things happen. Yeah. Well, unless I'm going to die at 80, in which case I guess that's about right. But, now, every 10 years or so I find that when I was 20, 30, 40, 50, I have this sort of reckoning personally, professionally. And I think it's good to check in with myself and because it's very easy just to kind of let it run, status quo.
Totally.
And you can be that frog boiling in water, they say, where you don't realize when you should get out of the pot.
And that's what I think. That's what I'm trying to my hope for this show. I mean, look, this is all a great rationalization for us to get together to talk on the mic, and so I'm happy. I don't need to justify it further than that. It's the audience's choice. Somebody chooses to listen. I hope that they've gotten something out of it, enjoyed it. But I don't need any reason to do it otherwise. But the goal of having this be a way that we can chat about these things in ways that people can listen and hopefully enjoy the way we chat about it, but they can also reflect on their own life, because again, most everybody who's of the type of society that they're listening to a podcast, considering these kind of things, they're going to have to deal with this stuff, or their friends or family are going to have to deal with these uncertainties, even if that's not the type of career you've had. I mean, it's certainly coming for everybody.
And I think that if, we're certainly not pretending that we have any solutions or answers for anybody.
Well, yeah, I'm the opposite. I have less. The more I'm here, the less I know.
But I think one thing about one contribution we can maybe make, and I know we've spent a lot of time here just kind of chatting because we haven't seen each other in almost 2 months. But that hopefully, as we do these conversations again, what we talk about is something that, as you said, people can identify with. Okay, I'm not in China, I'm not in the entertainment business, but man, what that person's wrestling with in terms of this issue personally, or what's happening, the decision has to be made, and they don't have all the pieces, but they got to make that decision now. I get that. I'm dealing with that myself, and that people start to see that, we're all kind of wrestling with the same stuff, and this gets back to, I guess, common humanity, and so forth.
And I hope that people, if you're listening to this and whatever you think, please let me know. Please go to crazyinagoodway.com. I have a contact form on there. Plus, I'm pretty easy to find on all the socials, and a lot of that stuff is linked. I think I've got all that linked now. And, let me know what you think. Let me know what you would like to hear us talk about, or if I should talk to you, if you'd like to be a guest on the show. I've got a nice list of guests coming up, and I have several interviews being recorded here in the next week or so. So I don't really have a shortage, but I would be happy to hear from people who think they would like to talk with me.
Yeah, but you're guaranteed to have a good time if you come on with Brendan. So I can confirm that.
Well, Kevin, I appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And we'll do this again sometime.
See you again, man.